Hi, I'm Anna. I've been with Rob for quite a while now. We met in college, got married soon after, and have been together for 15 years. Life with Rob was generally peaceful. We lived in a decent house, had good jobs, and shared a bunch of common interests. But there was always something missing: a child. You see, we tried for years to get pregnant. We visited doctors, tried different treatments, and even considered adoption, but nothing worked. As time went on, the strain of our childless reality began to pull at our once strong bond. Arguments became frequent, and the future started to look a bit gloomy. But then one day, something changed. It was a regular Wednesday morning. I woke up feeling a little queasy. Thinking it was something I ate, I brushed it off. But then I remembered. I had missed my period. Could it be? I quickly rummaged through the bathroom cupboard and found a leftover pregnancy test from years ago. Without wasting a moment, I used it, waiting for the result. The result felt like the longest 3 minutes of my life. When I finally dared to look, it was positive. My heart raced. We were pregnant. The joy, the excitement, the fear, it all rushed in. I had to tell Rob. He was in the living room, engrossed in some paperwork. Taking a deep breath, I walked up to him, the test still in my hand. "Rob," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm pregnant." He looked up, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Are you sure? I mean, at this age, is it even safe?" I was taken aback. This wasn't the reaction I was expecting. "I took the test, Rob. It's positive," I said, trying to reassure him. He sighed. "Anna, you know how hard it's been. And now, at 37, do you know the risks?" I felt a sting of hurt. "I thought you'd be happy," I whispered. "I am, I'm worried about you, about us," he replied, his voice softening a bit. "We've waited so long for this, Rob. We can't let fear dictate our happiness now," I countered. He looked down, avoiding my gaze. "Have you considered maybe not going through with it?" he asked. I couldn't believe my ears. "Terminate the pregnancy?" "No, Rob. This might be our only chance." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our situation pressing down on both of us. I wanted him to be as overjoyed as I was, but at that moment, all I saw in his eyes was fear and uncertainty. That night, as we lay side by side in bed, I held on to hope. Hope that our child would bring us closer again. Hope that our love was strong enough to overcome any challenge, and above all, hope for the future. The next few months were tough. As days turned into weeks, it became clear that this pregnancy wasn't going to be easy. I was often sick, nauseated, and felt exhausted all the time. But each little kick from inside reminded me why it was all worth it. One day, after feeling particularly weak, I collapsed. Thankfully, Rob was home and immediately rushed me to the hospital. As I lay on the cold hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines, I felt more vulnerable than ever before. "Is she going to be okay?" I heard Rob ask Dr. Mitchell, his voice laced with worry. "She needs rest," Dr. Mitchell replied. "Her body is under a lot of strain due to the pregnancy. It's imperative that she stays relaxed and avoids any stress." That hospital stay was the first of many. Each time I was admitted, I'd watch Rob from the window, pacing back and forth in the hospital corridor, talking on the phone, sometimes even arguing with the billing department. One evening, as I lay in the hospital bed, Rob walked in with a weary look on his face. He looked like he hadn't slept for days. "I met with Dr. Mitchell," he began. "He said we need to consider the possibility of bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy." I nodded slowly. "If it's best for the baby, I'll do it. Rob sat down next to me, holding my hand. I'm sorry, Anna. I wish I could do more to help. I squeezed his hand. You're here with me, that's more than enough. However, as the days went by, Rob's visits became less frequent. Sometimes he'd call, other times he'd send a text saying he was caught up with work. But the distance between us seemed to be growing. During one of my longer hospital stays, feeling particularly low and missing the comfort of my home, I asked a nurse if I could use the phone to call Rob. It's been 3 days, I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice, when he answered, You haven't visited. I know, Anna. It's hard for me seeing you like this, he admitted. Rob, I need you now more than ever, I pleaded. Silence. I'll try to come by tomorrow, he finally said, his voice distant. But tomorrow turned into the day after, and soon a week had passed. Feeling isolated and alone, I confided in my nurse, Lisa. He's probably just scared, she suggested, trying to be comforting. Sometimes when people can't handle situations, they distance themselves. One morning, after a particularly difficult night, Dr. Mitchell came into my room. I think it's time we discuss the birth plan, Anna, he began cautiously. There are some decisions to be made. Rob, despite his absences, was there for that discussion. We sat hand in hand, listening to our options, praying for the strength to make the right choices. Days turned into weeks, and as the date approached, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. But I held on to hope, believing that once our child arrived, everything would fall into place. Little did I know, the hardest part of our journey was yet to come. The first moments of holding my daughter Emma in my arms were moments of pure bliss. Her tiny fingers, her soft cooing sounds, it felt like a dream. But that dream was quickly shattered by Dr. Mitchell's grim announcement. Anna, Rob, he began with a heavy sigh, there are some concerns regarding Emma's health. That evening, as I cradled Emma, Rob walked into the room, a storm brewing in his eyes. Anna, he started, his voice shaking. How could you? Giving birth at this age, we knew the risks. Tears welled up in my eyes. Rob, I thought we wanted this. I thought we wanted a family. He was nearly shouting now. You should have considered an abortion. Why bring a child into the world with so many complications because of your selfishness? I was shocked. Rob, she's our daughter. We should be together in this, not pointing fingers. His face was red with anger. I can't believe I'm in this situation. I can't raise a child with potential disabilities. It's not the life I imagined. As the weight of his words sank in, a cold dread filled my heart. So what are you saying, Rob? He hesitated for a moment. I don't think I can do this. I can't be here, not like this. It felt like the floor had been pulled from beneath me. You're abandoning your daughter because she might be different? He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I just can't handle it, Anna. Devastation turned into determination. Fine. If you're leaving, then leave for good. But you'll have no claim over Emma. He didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving me with our newborn daughter, grappling with the uncertainty of our future. The first few weeks after Rob left were the hardest. The house felt empty, but the silence was deafening, and the reality of being a single mother weighed heavily on me. But every time I looked into Emma's big, innocent eyes, I felt a surge of determination. I was going to make sure she had the best life possible, no matter what it took. My sister Linda was a godsend during this time. She came over often, helping with household chores and looking after Emma so I could rest. One evening, as I was feeding Emma, Linda walked in holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Anna," she began gently, "you need to think about the future. Have you considered finding a place of your own?" I sighed, looking around the home that held so many memories. "I've thought about it, but the thought of leaving this place, it's just hard." Linda took my hand. "I know. But think about Emma. This house will always remind you of Rob and everything that happened. You both deserve a fresh start." She was right. I needed to let go of the past and focus on building a new life for Emma and me. The search for a new place wasn't easy with my limited savings and no job. Options were limited. But then one day, Linda called me excitedly. "Anna, you won't believe what I found. There's a small house for rent in my neighborhood. It's perfect for you and Emma." I went to see the house the very next day. It was a cozy 2-bedroom place with a small garden in the back. The landlord, Mrs. Peterson, was a kind elderly lady who lived next door. "Linda speaks very highly of you," Mrs. Peterson said, smiling warmly. "The place is yours if you want it." I felt tears of gratitude welling up. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. This means so much to me." Moving in was hectic, but with Linda's help, we managed. As I set up Emma's room, filling it with toys and her tiny clothes, a sense of peace washed over me. This was our home, our sanctuary. Linda popped her head into the room. "How's it going in here?" I smiled, hugging Emma close. "It's perfect. I can't thank you enough." She hugged us both. "That's what family is for. You're not alone in this, Anna. Remember that." Days turned into weeks, and life began to settle into a new routine. Morning walks with Emma, visits to the local park, and coffee dates with Linda became our new normal. One day, as Emma and I were playing in the garden, Mrs. Peterson walked over, holding a tray of freshly baked cookies. "Thought you two could use a treat," she said, smiling. I smiled back, taking a cookie. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. It's delicious." She chuckled. "Call me Ellie." Feels strange being called Mrs. Peterson by my new neighbor. We chatted as Emma giggled and played. Ellie shared stories of her own children, offering advice and wisdom. I felt a connection, a sense of community that had been missing for so long. As the days went by, the pain of the past began to fade. With the support of my sister and new friends like Ellie, I realized that while one chapter of my life had closed, another, even more beautiful one, was just beginning. Emma's first birthday was just around the corner, and I was deep in preparations. Ellie and Linda offered their assistance, suggesting ideas for decorations and games. As the day drew nearer, I found myself reflecting on the whirlwind of the past year. My baby girl, Emma, was blossoming into a bubbly, inquisitive child, her laughter a constant source of joy. One afternoon, as I was laying Emma down for her nap, the phone rang. The sound was sharp and unexpected. "Hello? Hello, Anna?" came the familiar voice. It was Dr. Mitchell. I felt a twinge of anxiety. "Dr. Mitchell, is there a problem?" He hesitated, which only deepened my concern. "Anna, I need you to come to the hospital. There's something about Emma we need to discuss." I felt my heart in my throat. "Is she okay?" His voice was thick with regret. "Please come in. We need to talk face to face." Linda agreed to watch Emma while I rushed to the hospital. The drive felt much longer than it was, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Dr. Mitchell greeted me in his office, his usually calm face lined with worry. "Anna, I'm so sorry to call you in this way." My patience was thinning. "What's going on?" Taking a deep breath, he began. "There's been a grave error. The initial test we ran on Emma after her birth got mixed up with another baby's." My confusion grew. Meaning? He met my gaze, his eyes filled with regret. Emma is healthy, Anna. She doesn't have any medical condition. I couldn't express how deeply sorry I am. The weight of his words hit me hard. You mean to tell me I've lived this past year under false assumptions? My life turned upside down because of this? His voice was barely above a whisper. Yes, and it's my responsibility. I can't begin to fathom the pain this has caused. I thought of Rob, of the bitterness and pain this mistake had caused. It's shattered my life. Dr. Mitchell looked defeated. I know words can't change the past, but I'll do everything I can to make it right. I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I need time to process this. Driving home, a mix of relief and fury consumed me. Yet, seeing Emma's joyful face as I walked in grounded me. She was my world, and she was okay. That night, Linda and I sat down, and I relayed everything. She was horrified. Anna, what are you going to do? I looked at Emma, peacefully sleeping. For now, nothing, and I don't want Rob to know. He made his choice. Linda squeezed my hand. You're strong, Anna. Remember, you're not alone in this. In the stillness of the night, I reflected on our journey. Yes, the revelation about Emma's health was bittersweet, but one thing was for sure. I would protect and cherish her regardless of the past. The swift passage of time amazed me. Before I knew it, Emma was already 5 and gearing up for her first day of school. My feelings were a whirlwind of pride, hope, and the natural apprehension of a mother. At breakfast a few days before school, Emma gazed at me, her eyes shimmering with anticipation. Mom, will I be going to school like other kids? I smiled warmly. Yes, sweetie, in just a few days you'll be starting. Her face lit up. Will I find friends there? Will they like me? Touched by her innocence, I assured her. Emma, you're such a lovely girl. Of course they'll adore you. On her first day, dressed in her new school uniform with a pink backpack hanging from her shoulders, Emma paused at the school gates. With a quiver in her voice, she admitted, Mommy, I'm scared. No one will talk to me. I crouched to her eye level. Honey, always remember to be yourself. You're amazing and they'll see that. Just give it some time. Her small hand waved goodbye as she joined the bustling crowd of students. I watched her until she was out of sight, my heart heavy with the typical worries of a parent. A few weeks later, Emma was all excitement and stories about her new friend, Sophia. Their adventures during breaks, their shared love for painting, and their little secrets. One day, she bounced home asking, Mom, can Sophia come over tomorrow? Delighted at her blossoming friendship, I agreed. Absolutely. I'm eager to meet your new buddy. The next afternoon was filled with their giggles and playful shouts. From the corner of my eye, I noticed their genuine bond and thought of how childhood friendships were so pure and uncomplicated. As the sun dipped, a car pulled up. Emma, holding Sophia's hand, led her to the door. To my shock, standing there were Rob and a young woman, presumably his new wife. Emma, inside now, Rob's voice was curt. Sophia, sensing the tension, looked worriedly between her parents and me. Daddy, I had so much fun. Emma's my best friend. Rob's gaze was cold. Sophia, we've talked about this. You shouldn't play with inferior children. His voice dripped with disdain, making it clear whom he referred to. I felt a rush of anger. Before I could retort, the young woman, probably trying to mediate, gently tugged at Sophia's hand. Come, dear, let's go home. Emma stood close to me, her eyes filled with confusion and hurt as the car drove away. Mom, why did he say that? Holding her close, I replied, Sometimes, sweetie, people don't say the nicest things. But always remember, you're wonderful just the way you are. That evening, as I tucked Emma in, I promised myself that no matter what, I'd always protect her from the cruel judgments of the world. Only days after the incident, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, soft yet firm, responded. "Hi, this is Emily, Sophia's mother. Can we talk?" Surprised, I replied cautiously. "Of course. What's on your mind?" She hesitated. "I'd rather discuss this face to face. Can we meet tomorrow? There's a cafe around the corner from your house." After a moment, I agreed. "All right, see you at 10 a.m. The next morning, I saw Emily waiting. She looked out of place, her pristine appearance contrasting with the laid-back vibe of the cafe. As I approached, she stood up, offering a polite if slightly forced smile. "Thank you for coming," she began, her eyes searching mine. After the other day, I couldn't shake off a nagging feeling that there's more to the story than Rob's told me. I took a deep breath. I'm not one to spread tales, but since Sophia is involved, I think you should know. She leaned forward, anticipation evident. "Please tell me everything." Over the next hour, I unfolded our past, how Rob and I had struggled with fertility, my unexpected pregnancy, his disinterest, the misdiagnosis, his leaving, and my subsequent journey with Emma. I made sure to be factual, not letting emotion color the narrative. Emily sat stunned. "He never told me any of this. He said you were the one who left him, and he always painted such a rosy picture of your marriage." I shrugged. "Sometimes people craft stories to cope or to hide." She looked defeated. "I feel like such a fool. I thought our love was genuine, but now it seems like he was just replacing one life with another." "Emily," I started, my tone firm, "it's not about him anymore. It's about Sophia and Emma. They formed a bond. I don't want Emma to suffer because of our past." She nodded. "I completely agree. Children shouldn't be dragged into adult disputes." As we parted, I felt a weight lifted. For the first time, I felt like I was truly free from Rob's shadow. Having laid our past bare that evening as Emma played with her toys, she looked up. "Mom, will I see Sophia again?" Smiling, I said, "Yes, sweetie, you will. And always remember, your past doesn't define your future. You do." My phone buzzed on the coffee table, startling me from my thoughts. Rob's name flashed on the screen, a name I hadn't expected to see in a long time. Hesitating for only a moment, I answered. "Anna." Rob's voice was filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I frowned, taken aback. "What are you talking about?" His voice grew softer, almost pleading. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Emily left me, she filed for divorce, and she's taken everything. Everything. I've lost almost everything, Anna, and it's all because she spoke to you." I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "Rob, you made your choices." I just told her the truth. There was a heavy pause. "She also told me about Emma, that she's healthy. You never told me. Why would I? After everything you said, after everything you did, you didn't deserve to know," I retorted. Rob's voice grew desperate. "Anna, I made a mistake. I realize that now. I want to be there for Emma. I want to be there for you. We can be a family again." I scoffed in disbelief. "Now that your life's in shambles, you suddenly want us back? You're unbelievable, Rob." "Anna, I know I messed up, but I've changed. Please give me a chance." I could feel anger rising in me. "You walked out on us, Rob. You called our daughter inferior and turned your back. Now that your little fairy tale with Emily has ended, you think you can just waltz back into our lives? Think again. He sounded desperate. Anna, I was wrong. I see that now. Can't you give me another chance? No, I replied firmly. Emma and I have moved on. We're doing just fine without you, and we don't need or want you in our lives. But Anna, it's over, Rob. Goodbye. I ended the call, my heart racing. I took a deep breath, letting the emotions wash over me. Emma and I had each other, and that was all that mattered. I wouldn't let Rob's selfishness disrupt our peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together.
The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my concentration. I'd been grading papers at the dining room table, enjoying a rare moment of peace in my usually chaotic life. But of course that couldn't last. Oops, sorry, Leah. Bella's shrill voice called from the kitchen. I'll clean it up later. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to take a deep breath before responding. It's fine, Bella. I'll take care of it. As I grabbed the broom and dustpan, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the hallway mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair pulled back in a messy bun, I barely recognized myself. At 35, I should be thriving in my career as an assistant professor, not playing maid to my irresponsible sister-in-law. The front door opened and Sam trudged in, looking exhausted. Hey, honey, he mumbled, barely meeting my eyes. Sam, we need to talk, I said, setting aside the broom. Why are Bella's things all over our guest room? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, she's going through a rough patch. Lost her job again. I told her she could crash here for a few days. A few days? I echoed, my voice rising. Sam, her stuff is everywhere. It looks like she's moving in. Before he could respond, Bella sauntered into the room, still in her pajamas despite it being nearly noon. Oh, hey, big bro. Thanks again for letting me stay. You're a lifesaver. I watched in disbelief as she planted a kiss on Sam's cheek, then flopped onto our couch, reaching for the TV remote. Bella, I said, trying to keep my voice level, I thought you were looking for a new job today. She waved a hand dismissively. Oh, you know how it is. The market's tough right now. I'll get to it tomorrow. I turned to Sam, silently pleading for backup, but he just shrugged helplessly. I'm heading to bed, he mumbled. Early shift tomorrow. As he disappeared upstairs, I felt a familiar knot of tension forming in my stomach. Something was off with Sam lately, beyond just the stress of his job. We'd barely spoken in weeks, and now this situation with Bella. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother-in-law, Christine. Heard Bella's staying with you, so kind of you to help out. Roger and I are thrilled you're all getting along so well. I nearly laughed out loud. Of course, Christine and Roger were thrilled. It meant they didn't have to deal with their youngest daughter's latest crisis. Leah? Bella's voice interrupted my thoughts. Do you guys have any snacks? I'm starving. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 before responding. There's fruit in the fridge, Bella. Help yourself. She made a face. Ugh, no junk food? How do you live like this? As I watched her rummage through our kitchen, leaving a trail of mess in her wake, I felt something inside me snap. That's it, I muttered, grabbing my keys and heading for the door. Where are you going? Bella called after me. Out, I replied curtly. Don't wait up. I slammed the door behind me, relishing the momentary silence. As I got into my car, I realized I had no idea where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't spend another minute in that house. My phone buzzed again, another text from Christine. By the way, Olivia mentioned she might need a place to stay for a while, too. You have room for one more, right? I stared at the message in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. How had my life spiraled so far out of control? As I pulled out of the driveway, I made a silent vow to myself. Something had to change, and soon. I just had to figure out what and how. I returned home late that night, hoping to find some peace. Instead, I walked into a disaster zone. Bella's clothes were strewn across the living room, and the kitchen sink overflowed with dirty dishes. The scent of stale pizza hung in the air. Sam? I called out, my voice tight with frustration. We need to talk. Now! He emerged from our bedroom, looking sheepish. Hey, Leah, I was just about to clean up. Save it, I snapped. This isn't about the mess. It's about Bella. She can't stay here, Sam. It's not working. His face hardened. She's my sister, Leah. Where's she supposed to go? I don't know, but this isn't sustainable. Our house isn't a halfway home for unemployed relatives. Sam's eyes flashed with anger. That's rich coming from you. At least I'm trying to help my family. What's that supposed to mean? He hesitated, then blurted out, I lost my job, okay? 2 weeks ago. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. The room spun. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. You what? How could you keep this from me? I was ashamed, he mumbled. I thought I could find something else quickly, but what? You decided to invite your jobless sister to live with us instead? She understands what I'm going through, Sam shouted. Unlike you, always wrapped up in your work, your students, your precious career. The words stung like a slap. I've been supporting us, Sam, paying the bills, keeping this household running, and this is how you repay me? Before he could respond, Bella stumbled in, clearly tipsy. Whoa, what's with all the yelling? Can't a girl get some beauty sleep around here? I rounded on her. Bella, this isn't working. You need to find somewhere else to stay. Her lower lip trembled. But Sam said I could stay as long as I needed, right, Sam? I turned to my husband, silently daring him to side with her. To my shock, he nodded. Yeah, Bells, you're welcome here. Unbelievable, I muttered. So that's it? I don't get a say in my own home? Sam's expression softened. Leah, please, we're all going through tough times. Can't we just support each other? I laughed bitterly. Support? Is that what you call lying to me for weeks? Inviting your sister to move in without even discussing it? Bella piped up. Hey, I can hear you. You know, if you don't want me here, just say so. I have been saying so, I exploded, but neither of you seems to care what I think or feel. Sam reached for me, but I jerked away. Don't. Just don't. I can't deal with this right now. I stormed upstairs, slamming our bedroom door behind me. As I collapsed onto the bed, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Hey sis, everything okay? Sam mentioned you might need some help around the house. I could come stay for a while if you need me. I stared at the message in disbelief. Was this some kind of sick joke? Had Sam invited his entire family to move in without telling me? Downstairs, I could hear Sam and Bella talking in hushed voices. My husband and his sister conspiring against me in my own home. The betrayal cut deep. I typed out a quick response to Olivia. Thanks, but I think we have enough house guests at the moment. Talk soon. As I hit send, a cold determination settled over me. This couldn't continue. Something had to give, and I was done being the only one making sacrifices. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start looking for my own place. If Sam and Bella wanted to play house, they could do it without me. It was time to take back control of my life, even if it meant walking away from everything I thought I knew. With that resolution, I drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of empty houses and endless arguments, wondering how my life had unraveled so quickly. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. I fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Christine's name flashed and my stomach dropped. Just what I needed. Another lecture from my mother-in-law. Hello, I answered, my voice still thick with sleep. Leah, dear, I hope I didn't wake you. Christine's saccharine tone grated on my nerves. I just wanted to check in. How are things with Bella? I bit back a sarcastic retort. Things are tense, Christine. I don't think this arrangement is working out. Oh, nonsense, she chirped. I'm sure you're all getting along splendidly. Bella's always been such a joy to have around. I nearly choked. A joy? Christine, she's turned our house upside down. She doesn't clean, doesn't look for work, and Sam. Now, Leah, Christine interrupted, her voice taking on a steely edge. I'm sure you're exaggerating. Bella's going through a rough patch. As family, we need to support her. And what about supporting me? I snapped. This is my home, too, and I didn't agree to any of this. There was a pause. Then Christine spoke again, her tone dripping with disappointment. I expected better from you, Leah. You've always been so rigid. Perhaps this is an opportunity for you to learn some flexibility. The conversation devolved from there, with Christine lecturing me on family loyalty and the importance of sacrifice. By the time I hung up, my blood was boiling. I stormed downstairs, ready to confront Sam and Bella, only to find the living room in even worse shape than before. Bella lounged on the couch, still in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone. Oh, hey, Leah, she said without looking up. We're out of milk. Could you pick some up? Something inside me snapped. No, Bella, I will not pick up milk. This isn't a hotel, and I'm not your maid. She finally glanced up, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. Geez, what's your problem? I was just asking. My problem, I seethed, is that you've been here for days, contributing nothing but mess and chaos. When are you planning to look for a job, or at least clean up after yourself? Bella's face crumpled. You don't understand. It's hard out there. I'm trying, but... But what? I interrupted. You seem to have plenty of energy for going out drinking and watching TV all day. Leave her alone, Leah. Sam's voice came from behind me. I whirled to face him, fury building. Of course you're taking her side, I spat. God forbid either of you take any responsibility. Sam's face hardened. That's not fair. We're both going through a tough time. And I'm not, I shot back. I'm the only one holding things together while you two play house. The argument escalated, voices rising until we were all shouting over each other. Suddenly, a crash from the kitchen silenced us. We rushed in to find Bella standing amidst shattered glass, my grandmother's antique vase in pieces at her feet. I was just trying to clean up, she whimpered. I stared at the broken shards, feeling something break inside me as well. Without a word, I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Where are you going? Sam called after me. Anywhere but here, I replied, my voice cold. I can't do this anymore. As I pulled out of the driveway, my phone buzzed again. A text from Roger, my father-in-law. Heard you're having some trouble at home. Remember, family comes first. Don't let your career get in the way of what really matters. I tossed the phone aside, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They were all against me. Sam, Bella, Christine, Roger. How had I become the villain in my own life? As I drove aimlessly, one thought crystallized in my mind. Something had to change, and if no one else was willing to make that change, it would have to be me. I returned home late that evening, exhausted and emotionally drained. The house was quiet, but the tension in the air was palpable. As I stepped into the living room, I froze. Bella had redecorated, my carefully chosen furnishings pushed aside to make room for her garish taste. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, my fists clenching at my sides. "Oh, hey, Leah!" Bella chirped, emerging from the kitchen. I thought I'd spruce the place up a bit. It was so boring before. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "Bella, we need to talk. This can't continue. You need to start looking for a job and your own place to live." She rolled her eyes. "Geez, you sound just like Mom and Dad. Can't you just chill?" "No, I can't chill," I snapped. "This is my home, and you're treating it like a frat house. Where's Sam?" As if on cue, Sam trudged down the stairs looking sheepish. "Hey, honey, I see you've noticed the changes." I rounded on him. "You let her do this without even asking me?" He shrugged helplessly. "I thought it might cheer you up. You've been so stressed lately." "Stressed?" I laughed bitterly. I wonder why. Maybe because my husband lost his job and didn't tell me, then invited his unemployed sister to live with us indefinitely? Bella piped up. "Hey, I'm right here, you know." "Trust me, I'm aware," I retorted. "Look, I'm setting some ground rules. Starting tomorrow, you both need to be actively job hunting, and Bella, you need to contribute to household chores and expenses." They exchanged glances, and I saw something pass between them that made my blood run cold. "Actually," Sam began hesitantly, "I've been thinking maybe we could invite Olivia to stay for a while, too. You know, to help with expenses." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Are you serious? You want to invite your other sister to live here, too?" "Well, yeah," Bella chimed in. "Olivia's got a great job. She could totally help out with the bills and stuff." The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. They weren't just taking advantage of my hospitality. They were planning to turn our home into some kind of family commune, with me footing the bill. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "This is not up for discussion. In fact, Bella, I want you out by the end of the week." Sam's face hardened. "You can't just kick her out, Leah. She's family." "And what am I?" I shot back. "Because lately it feels like I'm just a meal ticket and a maid service." The argument escalated quickly, voices rising until we were all shouting over each other. Suddenly my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Hey sis, just booked my flight. Can't wait to see you all next week." I stared at the message in disbelief, then looked up at Sam and Bella's guilty faces. "You already invited her," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, without even talking to me. Sam reached for me, but I jerked away. Leah, please, we're just trying to keep the family together. Family? I laughed bitterly. That what you call this? Because from where I'm standing it looks a lot like betrayal. I stormed upstairs, my mind racing. This was it, the final straw. I couldn't live like this anymore, constantly undermined and disrespected in my own home. As I threw some clothes into a suitcase, I made a decision. It was time to put myself first for once. I'd stay with a colleague for a few days, clear my head, and figure out my next move. But one thing was certain. I wouldn't be coming back to this chaos. It was time to reclaim my life, even if it meant leaving behind everything I thought I knew. With a heavy heart but a sense of resolve, I zipped up my suitcase and headed for the door, ignoring Sam and Bella's protests. As I drove away, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was taking control of my own destiny. I sat in my colleague's guest room, staring at my phone. Olivia's number glared back at me, daring me to make the call. With a deep breath, I hit dial. Leah? Olivia's voice was warm, but cautious. Is everything okay? I've been trying to reach Sam, but he's not answering. I laughed bitterly. Oh, everything's just peachy. Did you know about their little plan? Plan? What are you talking about? I filled her in on the chaos of the past few weeks. Bella moving in, Sam's job loss, and now their scheme to have Olivia join the fray. Oh my God. Olivia gasped. Leah, I had no idea. Sam just said you guys could use some help with expenses. I never meant to intrude. Well, that makes one of you, I muttered. There was a pause, then Olivia spoke again, her voice firm. I'm canceling my flight. This is ridiculous. Have you talked to Mom and Dad about this? I scoffed. Oh, I've talked to them all right. They think I'm being selfish for not wanting to support the entire family. That's absurd, Olivia said. Look, I'm coming into town next week for a conference. Why don't we meet up and figure this out? As we made plans, I felt a glimmer of hope. At least one person in this family seemed to have their head on straight. After hanging up, I checked my messages. 5 missed calls from Sam, 3 from Bella, and a scathing text from Christine. Leah, how could you abandon your family like this? I thought we raised you better. Anger bubbled up inside me. Before I could stop myself, I fired back a response. You didn't raise me at all, Christine. I'm Sam's wife, not your daughter, and right now, I'm not sure I want to be either. Seconds after hitting send, my phone rang. It was Roger. Leah, he began, his voice stern, I think you owe your mother-in-law an apology. I exploded. An apology? Are you kidding me? Your children have taken over my home, disrespected me at every turn, and you think I'm the one who needs to apologize? Now? Listen here. Roger started, but I cut him off. No, you listen. I'm done being the family doormat. If Sam and Bella want to play house, they can do it without me, and you and Christine can stop pretending you have any say in my life. I hung up, my hands shaking. Part of me felt liberated, but another part was terrified. What had I just done? My phone buzzed again, a text from Sam. Leah, please come home. We need to talk. I stared at the message, torn. Part of me wanted to rush back, to try and salvage what was left of my marriage. But a stronger part knew that going back now would just mean falling into the same old patterns. As I debated, another text came through, this time from Bella. Hey sis, no hard feelings about earlier, right? BW, I borrowed your car to go job hunting. Hope that's cool. That was the final straw. I'd left my car at home when I stormed out, and now Bella was joyriding in it, probably with no intention of actually looking for work. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. I couldn't go back. Not now, maybe not ever. It was time to start putting myself first. With shaking hands, I typed out a response to Sam. I'm sorry, but I can't come home right now. I need some time to think. Please tell Bella to return my car immediately, or I'll report it stolen. As I hit send, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I was standing up for myself. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was done being a supporting character in my own life story. It was time to take the lead. I stood on the doorstep of my own home, feeling like a stranger. It had been a week since I'd left, and Olivia's arrival for her conference had finally given me the courage to return. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The chaos that greeted me was beyond anything I'd imagined. Clothes, empty takeout containers, and beer bottles littered every surface. The air was thick with the stench of stale alcohol and unwashed bodies. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the eerie silence. Olivia appeared from the kitchen, her face a mask of shock and disgust. "Leah, thank God you're here. I don't even know what to say." Before I could respond, Bella stumbled down the stairs, clearly hungover. "Oh, hey sis," she slurred. "Didn't expect to see you back so soon." My blood boiled. "Where's Sam?" I demanded. As if on cue, my husband emerged from our bedroom, looking disheveled and reeking of booze. "Leah?" he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated incredulously. "This is my house, Sam. The better question is, what the hell have you been doing?" Olivia stepped in, her voice tight with anger. "They've been having a nonstop party, Leah. I got here yesterday, and it's been like this the whole time." I tried to talk some sense into them, but Sam had the decency to look ashamed. "Look, we just got a little carried away. Things have been tough, you know?" "Tough?" I exploded. "You think this is tough? Try working your ass off to support a family that doesn't appreciate you, only to come home and find it turned into a frat house." Bella piped up. "Hey, we've been looking for jobs." "Well, kind of. It's not our fault the market sucks." I rounded on her. "And my car? Where is it, Bella?" She paled. "Oh, about that. There might have been a tiny accident." The room spun. I gripped the wall for support, trying to process everything. That's when I noticed something on the coffee table. Job applications, but not for the positions I'd expected. "Sam," I said slowly, picking up the papers. "What are these?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a change. Those are applications for jobs overseas. You know, a fresh start for both of us." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Both of us? You made this decision without even talking to me? And what about my career, my students?" "I just thought." He trailed off, unable to meet my eyes. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. "You didn't lose your job, did you?" I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You quit, you were bored, so you threw away our stability, our future, without even discussing it with me." The silence that followed was deafening. Sam's guilty expression confirmed my suspicions. Olivia stepped forward, her face a mix of sympathy and disgust. "Leah, I had no idea things had gotten this bad. I'm so sorry." I barely heard her. My world was crumbling around me, years of trust and partnership dissolving in an instant. "Get out," I whispered, then louder. "All of you, get out of my house. Now." Bella started to protest, but Olivia silenced her with a look. "Come on," she said, grabbing both Bella and Sam by the arm. "We're leaving." As they shuffled out, Sam turned back. "Leah, please, we can work this out." I met his gaze, seeing a stranger where my husband used to be. "No, Sam, we can't. This isn't just about the mess or Bella or even the job. You've betrayed my trust in every possible way. We're done." The door closed behind them, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my marriage. As the gravity of the situation hit me, I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my relationship, had been a lie. But amidst the pain and betrayal, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was the push I needed to finally start living life on my own terms. I stood in the wreckage of my living room, surrounded by the debris of my shattered marriage. The silence was deafening after the chaos of the past few weeks. My phone buzzed incessantly, messages from Sam, Bella, Christine, and Roger, all demanding explanations, apologies, reconciliation. I ignored them all. With trembling hands, I dialed my lawyer's number. "Janet, it's Leah. I need to file for divorce. Today." As I hung up, a knock at the door startled me. I opened it to find Olivia, her face etched with concern. "Leah, I'm so sorry," she began, but I cut her off. "Don't. Just don't. I can't handle any more apologies right now." She nodded, understanding. "I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to help. What do you need?" I laughed bitterly. "A time machine? A new family? A life that isn't falling apart?" Olivia stepped inside, surveying the mess. "Let's start with something more manageable. How about we clean this place up?" As we worked, Olivia filled me in on what had happened after they left. Sam and Bella were staying with their parents, all of them in denial about the gravity of the situation. "They think you'll cool off and come around," Olivia said, shaking her head. I tried to tell them this was different, but they won't listen. My phone rang again. "Sam?" This time I answered. "Leah, please," he begged. "We can work this out. I'll get my old job back. I'll make Bella move out. Just come home." I am home, Sam, I replied, my voice steady. You're the one who needs to leave. I've called a lawyer. It's over. There was a long pause. You don't mean that, he finally said. What about our life together? Our plans? What plans? I snapped. The ones you made without me? The job applications for positions halfway across the world? Or maybe you mean your plans to turn our home into a flophouse for your irresponsible sister? That's not fair, Sam protested. We've been through a lot. No, Sam, I've been through a lot. You've been having a midlife crisis at my expense. I'm done. I hung up, my hands shaking. Olivia placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, she said softly. Before I could respond, there was a commotion outside. We rushed to the window to see Sam's car screeching into the driveway, Bella in the passenger seat. Oh no, Olivia muttered. This isn't good. Sam burst through the door, his eyes wild. Leah, you can't do this. We can fix this. Bella stumbled in behind him, clearly drunk. Yeah, sis, don't be such a buzzkill. We were just having some fun. I felt something snap inside me. Years of suppressed anger and resentment bubbled to the surface. Fun, I shouted. You call destroying my home, my marriage, my life fun? Get out, both of you. Get out now before I call the police. Sam reached for me, but Olivia stepped between us. She said, leave, Sam. Now. For a moment I thought he might argue, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. Come on, Bella, he muttered. Let's go. As they shuffled out, Bella turned back, her face twisted with spite. You know what, Leah? You were always too uptight. Sam's better off without you. The door slammed behind them, leaving Olivia and me in stunned silence. I can't believe this is happening, I whispered, sinking to the floor. Olivia sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but you're going to be okay. You're strong, Leah. Stronger than all of them put together. As I sat there, surrounded by the ruins of my old life, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief wash over me. Everything I thought I knew had crumbled, but from the ashes I could see the faint glimmer of a new beginning. You're right, I said, wiping away tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. I am strong, and it's time I started living for myself. 1 month after the explosive confrontation, I stood in my newly redecorated living room, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. The divorce papers lay signed on the coffee table, a bittersweet symbol of my newfound freedom. A gentle whine drew my attention to Rosie, my rescue dog, who patted over for a scratch behind the ears. Good girl, I murmured, grateful for her unconditional love. The doorbell rang, and I tensed, half expecting another drama-filled encounter. But it was Olivia, her face a mix of determination and concern. Hey, sis, she said, stepping inside. How are you holding up? I managed a small smile. Better than I expected, actually. It's peaceful. Olivia nodded, then took a deep breath. Leah, there's something you should know. I went to see Sam and Bella at Mom and Dad's place yesterday. My heart raced. And? It was a disaster, she sighed. Bella's drinking has gotten worse, and Sam, he's a mess. He kept talking about winning you back, making grand plans that made no sense. I closed my eyes, fighting a wave of conflicting emotions. That's not my problem anymore, Olivia. I know, she said quickly, and I'm not here to guilt you. I finally told them all exactly what I thought of their behavior, Mom and Dad included. My eyes snapped open. You did what? Olivia's face hardened. I told them they were selfish, irresponsible, and that they'd driven away the best person in this family. I said if they didn't get their act together, they'd lose me too. I stared at her, speechless. Olivia had always been the peacekeeper, avoiding confrontation at all costs. You didn't have to do that, I whispered. She grabbed my hand. Yes, I did. Leah, I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you sooner. Can you forgive me? Tears welled up in my eyes as I pulled her into a hug. There's nothing to forgive. You're here now, and that means everything. As we embraced, my phone buzzed. A text from Sam. I understand now. I'm sorry for everything. I hope one day you can forgive me. I showed it to Olivia, who raised an eyebrow. Are you going to respond? I thought for a moment, then typed, I forgive you, Sam. Not for you, but for me. I hope you find peace and learn from this. Goodbye. As I hit send, a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying lifted from my shoulders. I turned to Olivia, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. You know what? I think it's time for a celebration, I declared. Olivia grinned. What did you have in mind? An hour later, we sat on my back porch, sipping wine and watching the sunset. Rosie lounged at our feet, content in the peaceful atmosphere. To new beginnings, Olivia toasted, raising her glass. And to family, I added, the ones we choose. As we clinked glasses, I reflected on the tumultuous journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the heartache, it had all led to this moment of clarity and self-discovery. I realized that in losing the family I thought I needed, I'd found the strength I never knew I had. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the future. "You know," I said to Olivia, "I think I'm going to apply for that department head position at the university, the one I always thought was out of my reach." Olivia beamed. "That's fantastic. You'll be amazing." As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The chaos of the past few months had forged me into someone stronger, someone unafraid to stand up for herself and pursue her dreams. I looked at Olivia, my faithful ally, and down at Rosie, my loyal companion. This, I realized, was what true family looked like. Not the toxic relationships I'd left behind, but the supportive, loving connections I'd chosen for myself. "Here's to the next chapter," I said softly, more to myself than anyone else. And as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them, on my own terms, with my chosen family by my side.
I'm Amelia, about to turn 27 this year. I've been happily married for 5 years, and my son Martin just celebrated his 4th birthday. I used to work full-time after we got married, but now I balance part-time work at the same company. My husband Brian is 33 years older than me. Brian's initial enthusiasm in our dating days was exciting, but after we got married, his behavior changed. He became more domineering. Brian has a 20-year-old sister named Jane, and their age difference seems to make Brian more indulgent with her. Before we were married, I didn't mind Jane's frequent visits. I assumed they had a close relationship. But after we tied the knot, I noticed Jane's behavior shift. She often drops by unannounced, expecting to be served without bringing anything to show her appreciation. Brian, instead of addressing this, expects me to cater to her demands. Jane treats me like I'm invisible, only speaking to Brian. Despite not preparing for an extra guest, I end up serving dinner to Jane. Brian, rather than understanding, blames me for not being more considerate. Even when Jane apologizes, it's clear she enjoys the preferential treatment Brian gives her. Left with leftovers, I make my own meal while Brian and Jane chat on the sofa, leaving the dining table a mess. They treat Martin and me more like hired help than family. One evening, as I'm about to bathe Martin, Brian interrupts loudly, demanding I buy a cake for Jane despite the late hour. Jane insists on having it right away, and Brian blames me for the delay. Feeling pressured, I reluctantly take Martin to the cake shop. Overhearing their conversation, I learn they're criticizing me and questioning why Brian married me. Martin, though too young to understand the words, senses the tension. I try to hide my frustration and ask him about his cake preference. He cheerfully requests one with lots of fruit. Our trip to the cake shop was filled with discussions about cakes, momentarily distracting me from Brian's harsh words. Martin and I arrived just before closing time. Fortunately, we found the cake Jane desired, so we purchased 2 cakes, including the fruit-loaded one Martin wanted. Back home, I served the cakes to Jane and Brian, then prepared Martin's cake and headed to the dining room. The moment I placed it in front of Martin, Jane pointed and expressed her desire for that cake. Before I could react, Brian moved Martin's chosen cake in front of Jane, disregarding Martin's protests. Brian justified his action, claiming he bought the cake with his earnings and had the right to choose for Martin. Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I voiced my dissatisfaction. In response, Brian threatened with divorce. Martin, who had stopped crying, anxiously held my hand and then, after some thought, said, "Mom, I also love cake with strawberries on it. Yes, it's really delicious." He mentioned this while eating the cake initially wanted by Jane. Feeling that Martin was enduring too much, I lifted his cake plate. When I saw Jane reaching for it, I took Martin to the next room so he could enjoy his cake in peace. Brian apologized to Jane, claiming he was sorry for being stingy. Despite wanting to retort, I held back for Martin's sake. Watching Martin innocently enjoy his cake was a heartwarming sight. After finishing the cake, we decided to have a late bath and sleep in Martin's bed. The next morning, I discovered Jane had already left. As I prepared breakfast, I heard Martin crying. Shockingly, his piggy bank, a gift from my father, was broken and the saved money was gone. Martin, who always said goodnight to the piggy bank, was left heartbroken. When I questioned Brian about it, he casually mentioned that Jane needed some money, so she took it from the piggy bank. Holding a crying and shaking Martin, I felt his pain so acutely that I cried with him. It was painful to witness Brian prioritizing and caring for his sister more than our son. Expressing my anger and sadness, I confronted Brian, breaking my usual silence on arguments in front of Martin. Brian, without a word, went to the bedroom and returned with something shocking in hand: divorce papers. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Brian had tucked away somewhere I didn't know. In a sudden burst, he confronted me, shoving the papers at me before storming out of the house with a loud bang. Martin, who had never cried over the issues with Brian and Jane, seemed to have reached his limit, crying since last night. Unable to bear seeing Martin so hurt, I suggested skipping daycare for the day, and he happily agreed with a loud yes, showing a faint smile. We spent the day playing and bonding, with Martin bringing a picture book from the shelf, sitting on my lap, and happily remarking, "The teacher at the nursery today was Mama, right? He looks like an angel." His little heart seemed filled with patience, and I decided to make the day special by taking a day off from work. Despite causing potential trouble at my workplace, they kindly understood the situation and granted me a day off. In the morning, we visited the park, played hide and seek, and had fun in the sandbox and on the slide. When we returned home for lunch, Martin appeared sleepy, usually napping by himself, but today he fell asleep on my lap, like when he was a baby. Though I initially thought of doing household chores during his nap, I decided that today was special. Instead, I allowed myself to be healed by his peaceful sleeping face and gentle breathing. However, my serene moment was abruptly interrupted by a noise from the entrance, indicating the front door had opened. As it wasn't Brian's usual time to come home, I became suspicious and quickly hid in the bedroom closet, clutching Martin. A voice echoed through the house, and to my surprise, it was Jane. Trembling with fear, I listened as she searched for something, expressing frustration over not finding it. Jane then made a phone call, mentioning Brian and discussing their unsuccessful search. After hearing her lock the front door and leave, I put Martin to bed and contemplated the strange events. I couldn't comprehend why Jane had entered the house and what they were looking for. Suddenly, Brian seemed like a stranger, and I felt a mix of disgust and fear towards him. Swiftly packing essentials for Martin and myself, we headed to the station and took a train to my parents' house. Fortunately, their home was nearby, just 2 stations away. Although I hadn't contacted them beforehand, my parents sensed something from my expression and welcomed us without asking questions. I shared the entire ordeal with them, including my fear of staying at our house due to Brian and Jane's actions. Upon hearing my mother's suggestion that Jane might have been looking for my belongings, possibly cash or cards, I recalled my past experience as a successful CEO in the handmade goods industry. I had entrusted the company to friends when I decided to prioritize raising my child after getting married. Although I still worked part-time and communicated with the company from home, Brian was unaware that I was still the CEO. I discovered the hidden divorce papers that Brian had tucked away, suspecting that he thought I had a decent amount of savings. While I've mentioned to him that I still receive some assistance from the company, I've deliberately kept the details about being the CEO and my savings private. This secrecy stems from realizing early in our marriage that Brian struggles with managing money and tends to spend everything he earns. Kevin, at first, provided only $200 a month for food expenses and even suggested I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. However, with the financial strain of raising Martin and only $200 for food, I never agreed to be a full-time housewife. Eventually, he reluctantly allowed me to work part-time. To ensure I wouldn't consider divorce, he had me sign a postmarital property waiver through a lawyer. Since Martin's birth, I used my savings for his nursery fees and clothes. Since I've only received $200 for food, I've never asked Brian for additional funds beyond the food budget, leading him to believe I have savings. Considering Jane's apparent need for money and Brian's perception of my financial situation, they might be searching for my cash cards. I have a separate savings account dedicated to Martin with a portion of my salary directly deposited into it each month. Despite their search, they won't find the cash cards as I always carry my valuables. However, there's still an unsettling issue. Jane might be entering our house even when we're not there, and Brian may be allowing it. Following my father's advice, I decided to store my valuables, including the cash cards, in my parents' safe. As I pondered their need for money, Martin approached my father, crying over his broken piggy bank and the shattered promise of saving up. My father, angered by Martin's story, vowed to call Kevin. My mother suggested finding out their purpose calmly, as Brian's mention of divorce might shift blame to us, making the divorce more favorable for him. To ascertain their purpose, I decided to record their conversation, consulting a lawyer who was a friend of my father's. Returning home, I began cooking dinner, keeping my phone screen down to record secretly. Brian arrived home, surprising me by immediately asking about my cash cards. When I questioned him, he gave vague answers, attempting to deceive me. When I remained silent, Brian grew agitated and demanded all my part-time money for his sister. Refusing, I explained it was for Martin's savings. In response, he angrily pushed the signed divorce papers toward me, declaring that I was living off his money and didn't need to save for Martin. He even uttered words implying he valued Jane more than our son. Hearing this, I stopped preparing the meal, put the divorce papers in my bag, took Martin's hand, and headed for the door. Kevin, in a loud voice, declared his serious intent for divorce, instructing me never to come back. I responded by stating I wouldn't return to a house where a stranger could come and go freely. After leaving, I received numerous messages and calls from Kevin, which I ignored. Turning off my phone, I sought refuge at my parents' house, sharing the recording and divorce papers with them. Although I confessed to having no love or affection for Kevin, I expressed concern for Martin. My parents advised me to do as I pleased, acknowledging the potential emotional impact on Martin if a divorce were to occur. While grappling with the decision to divorce Kevin, Martin expressed his hunger. My mother, seeing my distress, kindly made him hamburgers, his favorite dish. Overwhelmed with emotions, tears welled up in my eyes as my mother told Martin, with a warm smile, that she prepared the hamburgers so that he and I could visit whenever we wanted. Taking a bite, Martin exclaimed with joy, praising Gran's hamburgers and expressing a desire to eat them every day. I responded, saying it's because the hamburger contains the love I have for him. In a touching gesture, he took a big bite and offered it to me. Moved by Martin's kindness, my tears couldn't be held back, and even though I tried to stop them, they persisted. My father, noticing Martin's concern, reassured him that my tears were of happiness, not sadness. Hearing this, Martin, in a moment of understanding, hugged me, and my father's eyes turned bright red, realizing the blessing of being with family. I remarked to Martin that family is precious. Surprised, he questioned if Dad had mentioned that only Jane was family. My father gently confirmed it, but then asked Martin if he wanted to live with them as family. With a laugh, Martin happily agreed, making everyone smile. Naturally, despite contemplating divorce, The meal felt so happy that I finally decided to part ways with Kevin. I planned to inform Martin about it, and even though discussing it weighed heavily on my heart, Martin seemed to grasp the situation happily. He expressed the desire to live as a family, embracing the pet dog and calling him his younger brother, despite the dog being older. Preparations for the divorce began, starting with contacting a lawyer who was a friend of my father. The next day, we formalized the contract, and my father and Martin shared comforting laughter while I lay in bed reminiscing about my childhood. The following day, upon checking my smartphone, I found over 200 calls and messages from Kevin, showcasing his emotional instability. Exhausted, I turned off my phone and, with the lawyer's assistance, explained the situation to my parents. Jane had accumulated significant debt from a casino and shopping addiction, and Brian acted as her guarantor, planning to use my savings. The lawyer confirmed that the divorce papers had already been submitted, and Brian sobbed upon realizing it was finalized. Despite expecting disagreements about child support, he signed a pledge to pay $340 to Martin every month. In a subsequent call from Kevin, his tone lacked aggression, and he calmly admitted to financial manipulation and explained his complex feelings toward Jane. I firmly asserted my decision not to reconsider and heard his faint sobbing before he wished me happiness and hung up. Remaining strong until the end, I discussed future plans with my parents and decided to stay with them until Martin grows up. I resumed my role as a company president and later learned that Brian and Jane had informed their parents about the divorce and debt, resulting in disownment. Today, I find happiness being with my family.
Life's funny, you know? You start off with a heart full of dreams and a head full of plans, thinking you've got it all figured out. That was me, Jane, and my husband Alex when we first tied the knot. We were like two peas in a pod, living in this cozy house I got from my granny, with our little bundle of joy, Lily lighting up our world. Back then, Alex had just opened up his bakery. It was small, but it was his pride and joy. I was climbing the ladder at the company, crunching numbers as an economist. We were a team dreaming big dreams about big houses and college funds for Lily, and maybe a sibling or two down the line. But as the months rolled by, something shifted. The bakery remained small, barely scraping by. I tried talking to Alex about maybe expanding or trying something new to boost business. Alex, babe, have you thought about maybe offering catering services? Or what about those pastry classes you always wanted to run? I'd suggest, trying to keep the conversation light and positive. He just waved me off, his forehead creasing in annoyance. Jane, I know what I'm doing, okay? We're fine as we are, he'd say, but we weren't fine, not really. I started taking on more hours at work, trying to make up for the shortfall. It was around then that things with Alex's mom got tense too. She'd call out of the blue, laying into me about how I wasn't supporting Alex enough. Listen here, Jane, she'd hiss over the phone. My son doesn't need your charity. He's doing just fine without your meddling. I was taken aback, to say the least. Mrs. Thompson, I'm just trying to help. We're family, aren't we? And besides, I'm not exactly sitting on a pile of cash here. I'm working hard for everything we have, I'd explain. Lately, things have been going south for Alex's bakery, like a ship hitting one iceberg after another. First, he had to let go of half the staff, which was tough. Those were people we knew, people who relied on that paycheck. Then he had to cut down on production, saying there wasn't enough demand to keep things running like before. It broke my heart to see him so defeated, but I wasn't about to sit back and watch our dreams crumble to dust. One evening, I sat down with him, trying to keep the conversation as light as possible. Alex, love, have you thought about maybe bringing someone in, a consultant or something, to look at what's going wrong and help us fix it? He barely looked up from his plate, his fork playing with his food more than anything. Jane, we've been over this. I don't need some outsider telling me how to run my bakery, he'd say. But it could help, don't you think? Maybe there's something we're missing. We could even consider a loan, just to tide things over and invest in a bit of a revamp. That got his attention. His head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. A loan? Are you out of your mind? We're already hanging by a thread, Jane, and now you want us to drown in debt? I tried to keep my voice calm, even though frustration was bubbling inside me. It's not drowning if it helps us swim, Alex. I'm just trying to find a way to help us get through this, I'd say. But he slammed his fork down, pushing away from the table. No, Jane, just no, he'd say, storming out, leaving me sitting there, staring at his uneaten dinner. A few months passed, and the bakery's front door had a new sign hanging on it. Closed until further notice. It was like a punch to the gut every time I walked past it. Inside our home, the air was thick with unspoken words and frustration. Alex had retreated into himself, spending days on end flipping through job listings with a scowl, his pride bruised and battered. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found Alex slumped on the couch, the glow of the TV casting shadows across his face. Alex, we need to talk about you finding a job, I started, trying to keep my voice steady and calm. He didn't even look up. I'm looking, Jane. Looking, he'd say, but looking or scrolling through social media wasn't bringing in income. Not just whatever this is. I couldn't help but let a bit of sarcasm slip. Finally, he looked at me, his face set in a stubborn line. I told you, I'm not settling for some entry-level crap. I have a degree, Jane. I was a businessman. I'm not going to be someone's lackey, Alex snapped back. Your business failed, Alex, I reminded him, a little more harshly than I intended. We can't afford your pride right now. We need practical solutions, real income. That set him off. So what? You think I'm just a failure? Is that it? You don't think I can make it back to the top? It's not about what I think, I tried to reason. It's about reality. We have bills, a daughter to think about. He didn't let me finish. Forget it, Jane. You wouldn't understand. You're just like everyone else, trying to keep me down. The argument spiraled from there. Harsh words thrown back and forth until he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Not long after that mess, his mother called. As soon as I heard her voice, I braced myself. Jane, you need to do something about getting Alex a job at your place. A good one, she demanded, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Mrs. Thompson, it doesn't work like that, I started, feeling the frustration building. They don't just hand out high positions based on a request, especially not to someone with no experience in the field. She huffed. You need to support your husband more, Jane. He's got potential. You're just holding him back. The conversation went in circles, her accusing me of not doing enough, of not caring enough, while I tried to explain the reality of our situation. It ended with her hanging up on me, leaving me feeling even more isolated and frustrated. And so, days turned into weeks with Alex barely lifting a finger around the house, consumed with his phone or the TV, leaving me to juggle work, household chores, and taking care of Lily. Every attempt to talk to him about responsibilities, about being a part of this family, was met with defensiveness or outright avoidance. Can you at least pick up Lily from school today? I asked one morning, hoping for a small win. I'm busy, Jane, was his dismissive reply, not even specifying what he was busy with. Doing what, Alex? What's so important that you can't help with your daughter? I pressed, but he just shrugged. Just stuff you wouldn't get, he said, wrapped up in his own world. That's how it was now, him wrapped up in his world of whatever, me trying to keep everything else from falling apart. Every conversation a battle, every day a little harder than the last. Things between Alex and me hadn't been great, but I never expected to find out he was taking cash right out of my purse. It started small, a $20 here, a $50 there. I thought I was being forgetful at first, until one day the missing amounts were too big to ignore. I waited for Alex to come home, tapping my foot, my arms crossed. The minute he walked through the door, I was on him like a hawk. Alex, we need to talk. Now, I said, my voice sharp. The cash from my purse. It's been going missing, And I want to know why, I demanded. For a moment, he tried to play dumb, his eyes shifting away from mine. Money? What are you talking about, Jane? Don't play games with me, he said. I've been noticing for weeks. It's gone. And you're the only other person here, I insisted. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Okay, I took it. But Jane, you don't understand. I needed it. Needed it for what, Alex? Beer? Because that's all. I see what you're doing these days. Sitting around drinking while I'm out working my ass off, I confronted him. He flinched at that, but anger quickly replaced the guilt in his eyes. I don't have to explain myself to you, Jane. It's not like I'm asking for much, just a little cash to get by. Get by? I was incredulous. While I'm juggling bills, trying to keep us afloat. That money wasn't yours to take, Alex. That's stealing. His face turned red, and he took a step towards me, his voice raising. Stealing, really, Jane? From my own wife? That's what you're going to call it? Yes, that's exactly what I'm calling it. I stood firm. Because that's what it is, Alex. You took something that wasn't yours without asking. What else would you call it? We stood there glaring at each other, the tension thick in the air. It felt like a chasm had opened up between us, one filled with betrayal and hurt. Before I could say anything else, his phone rang. He glanced at it and then stormed off into the other room, leaving me standing there, fuming and heartbroken. The next day, things went from bad to worse. Alex's mom called, and before I could even get a word in, she was ripping into me. Jane, you ungrateful little witch, how dare you accuse my son of stealing? Do you have any idea what you've done? I pressed the phone against my ear, her shrill voice making my head pound. Mrs. Thompson, he took money from me. What was I supposed to do? Just ignore it? That's exactly what you should have done. He's your husband, for God's sake. You're supposed to support each other, she retorted. Support doesn't mean turning a blind eye to problems, Mrs. Thompson. It means facing them together. But how can we do that when he's lying and taking money behind my back? I argued. You've always been too hard on him, Jane, always expecting too much. It's no wonder he felt he had to hide things from you, she huffed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like we were living in two different realities. Expecting too much? I'm working day and night to keep us going, and he... Enough, Jane. I won't hear another word against my son. You've made your bed, now lie in it, she interrupted. And with that, she hung up, leaving me staring at the phone in disbelief. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about trust, respect, and the realization that maybe, just maybe, I was in this fight all alone. Life had thrown its fair share of curveballs, but nothing hit harder than the day Lily fell sick. It wasn't just a sniffle or a cough. It was one of those moments that stops you dead in your tracks, forcing you to reassess everything. Lily's fever had spiked in the night, her little body racked with coughs that seemed to shake the very bed she lay in. I remember sitting beside her, a cool cloth in hand, trying to bring some relief. The next morning, with Lily still burning up, I knew we needed a doctor. Alex was sprawled on the couch, a can of beer already in hand. It was barely 9 a.m. Alex, Lily's sick, really sick. I need to take her to the doctor, I said, my voice strained with worry. He glanced up, irritation flashing across his face. So take her. What do you want me to do about it? I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream. Maybe act like a father. I can't do everything alone, Alex. He didn't answer, just turned his attention back to his phone, effectively ending the conversation. At the doctor's office, the news wasn't good. Lily needed medicine, maybe even a specialist. The cost started to pile up in my head, a mountain of expenses we were ill-prepared to handle. I called Alex from the pharmacy, hoping for some semblance of support. The medicine's expensive, Alex, and she might need more tests. We need to figure this out. There was a pause before he spoke, his voice cold. Well, what do you want me to do about it, Jane? Money doesn't grow on trees. I was stunned into silence. Our daughter was sick, and all he could think about was money. She's your daughter, Alex. She needs us. Can't you see that? Of course I see that, but freaking out about it isn't going to make money appear. You figure it out, you're good at that, he retorted before hanging up. I felt a mix of anger, frustration, and sheer determination. Lily needed me, and I wasn't about to let her down. The decision to not send money to Alex's mom that month was a tough one, but necessary. Lily's health came first, no matter what. But when Mrs. Thompson found out, the fury was unleashed. "Where's my money, Jane?" she demanded over the phone, her voice a sharp knife. I took a deep breath, bracing myself. Lily's sick. The money went to her medicine and doctor's visits. We had no choice. No choice? That's my money, Jane. You can't just decide not to send it. What am I supposed to do? She accused. Your granddaughter is sick, Mrs. Thompson. Doesn't that matter to you? Lily's health is more important right now, I pleaded. She scoffed, a sound that made my skin crawl. You're just using that as an excuse. I need that money, Jane. You're being selfish. The conversation went downhill from there, ending with her calling me names and hanging up. I stood there, phone in hand, feeling a cocktail of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, disbelief, but above all, a fierce protectiveness over Lily. The day everything turned on its head started like any other, but ended in a way I never could have predicted. It was when I stood at the checkout line, groceries piled up, that I reached for my bank card and found nothing but emptiness. Panic knotted my stomach, not just at the embarrassment of not being able to pay, but at the realization of what it meant. Alex had taken my card for a whole week. My calls to him went unanswered, a silence that spoke volumes. Then, out of the blue, he returned, but not alone. His mother was in tow, both of them wearing smug looks that didn't bode well. Before I could even demand answers, Alex dropped his bombshell. I won, Jane. $5 million. Can you believe it? The news knocked the wind out of me. Not just the amount, but the sheer audacity of him claiming this victory after everything. What? How? I managed to ask. With your card, he said, as if he had done something clever. Bought a lottery ticket. The room spun. He used my card without permission, and now this. His next words cut deeper than the betrayal of theft. I'm leaving you, Jane. This is my chance to start over without you dragging me down. Me and Mom, we're set. His mother, standing there with that twisted grin, twisted the knife. Told you, Jane. You never believed in my son. Now look at you, left behind while we move on to better things. I was speechless. The injustice of it all burned in my chest. You think you can just take that money and run? That's my card, my account. You stole from me, Alex. He shrugged, that infuriating indifference back in full force. Finders keepers, Jane. I won fair and square. It's time I found someone more supportive, someone who appreciates me. The words stung, but it was the dismissal of our life together, of our daughter, that hurt most. And what about Lily? You're abandoning your daughter. Lily will be fine with you. I need a fresh start, away from all this. He gestured vaguely around our home, as if it were a trap he had finally escaped. I wasn't just going to roll over and let him take everything from us. Especially not with money that was as much mine as it was his, if not more so. The first step was finding a lawyer, someone who could navigate the treacherous waters of legal battles that lay ahead. When I sat down across from Miss Rivera, a sharp woman with a reputation for being a bulldog in court, I knew I had found my champion. I'm not going to lie to you, Jane. This is going to be a tough fight, Miss Rivera began, her voice matter-of-fact. But it's not insurmountable. I nodded, clenching my fists in my lap to stop them from shaking. I understand, but I can't just let him get away with this. It's not right. She smiled, and there was a glint of something fierce in her eyes. I like your spirit. We'll give it everything we've got. First, we'll need to prove the purchase was made with your card. Do you have statements or any evidence of the transaction? Of course, I replied, pulling out copies of my bank statements I had brought with me. It's all here, the date, the time, the exact amount. Good, Miss Rivera said, taking the papers and scanning them quickly. This is a solid start. Next, we'll file for an injunction to freeze the winnings until the court makes a decision. It's going to make him and his mother very unhappy, but it's a necessary step. The thought of facing Alex and his mother again made my stomach churn, but the fire Miss Rivera had ignited in me burned brighter. Let them be unhappy. After everything they've done, it's the least they deserve. The day we served Alex with the papers, I saw him for the first time since he left. He looked different, harder, colder. His mother was with him, of course, her sneer as pronounced as ever. "This is a mistake, Jane. You're going to lose," Alex said, his voice laced with a venom I hadn't heard before. "I'm not the one who made a mistake," I shot back, my voice steady despite the trembling I felt inside. "Stealing from your family, abandoning your daughter, that was all you." His mother stepped forward, her finger wagging in my face. "You're a greedy, ungrateful little—" "Enough," Miss Rivera interjected, stepping between us with a calm authority that immediately silenced Alex's mother. "This will be settled in court, not on your doorstep." After months of legal wrangling, the day of reckoning finally arrived. I sat in the courtroom, a bundle of nerves, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. Across the room, Alex and his mother sat together, an air of smug confidence about them that made my skin crawl. They whispered to each other, casting occasional glances my way, their expressions a mix of disdain and superiority. My lawyer leaned over, her voice a whisper of steel. "Ready for this, Jane? It's showtime." I nodded, not trusting my voice. My heart hammered in my chest, a loud echo in the silent room as we awaited the judge's entrance. When the judge finally entered, the room hushed to a solemn quiet, and the proceedings began, a blur of legal jargon and back and forth that felt both endless and fleeting. Alex's lawyer painted him as a wronged man, desperately trying to claw back some dignity from a life derailed. It was almost laughable if it wasn't so tragic. Then Miss Rivera stood, clearing her throat. "Your Honor, let's not forget the facts. The lottery ticket, the source of this windfall, was purchased with stolen funds, my client's funds. This isn't a fairy tale windfall. It's the result of deceit, a betrayal of familial trust." The back and forth continued until the judge finally called for silence, ready to deliver the verdict. "See?" My heart stopped, every second stretching into eternity as we awaited his words. "In light of the evidence presented, it is the decision of this court that the majority of the lottery winnings, being the result of a transaction made with funds not belonging to Mr. Alex Thompson, be awarded to Mrs. Jane Thompson," the judge announced, his voice carrying a weight that felt like a gavel to my soul. A wave of relief washed over me, so intense it left me dizzy. Beside me, Miss Rivera squeezed my hand, a victorious smile on her face. Across the room, Alex's face was a picture of shock, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. His mother's reaction was more vocal, a strangled gasp of indignation that echoed off the courtroom walls. "This is robbery, pure and simple," she exclaimed, her voice shrill with disbelief. But her protests fell on deaf ears, the judge already moving on to finalize the proceedings. Months had rolled by since the dust settled on the courtroom floor, leaving me with a significant chunk of the winnings and a fresh start. I didn't waste any time dwelling on what could have been. Instead, I focused on the future, investing wisely in shares of a reputable company and securing a nest egg for Lily's education. She was going to have the opportunities I fought tooth and nail for, without the shadow of her father's mistakes looming over her. As for Alex and his mother, well, their story took the kind of turn you'd expect when too much money meets too little sense. He bought himself an outrageously expensive car, flaunting it like a trophy whenever he got the chance. But the flash and dazzle couldn't mask the inevitable. His gambling, which started as a small-time hobby, spiraled out of control, swallowing every last penny of his windfall. Last I heard, he was drowning in debt, the fancy car long gone, and living off whatever his mother scraped together from her pension. Their grandiose dreams deflated to the size of their cramped living quarters in his mother's old house. The two of them constantly at each other's throats. Alex never did get a job, pride and laziness anchoring him to his mother's couch as firmly as if he were cemented there. One afternoon, while Lily and I were at the park enjoying a peaceful, simple moment, Sarah, my steadfast friend through thick and thin, sidled up beside me on the bench. "Jane, you heard about Alex?" she asked, a note of pity in her voice that I didn't need. I nodded, keeping my eyes on Lily as she laughed, swinging higher and higher. "Yeah, heard he's hit rock bottom." Sarah shook her head. "It's a damn shame, isn't it? All that money and nothing to show for it." I sighed, a small part of me still aching for the man I once loved, for the father Lily deserved but didn't have. "It is a shame, but we're moving on, Sarah. We're happy." Our conversation drifted to lighter topics, but as I sat there basking in the late afternoon sun, my thoughts briefly wandered to Alex. I wondered if he ever thought about us, about the life he threw away for a shot at easy money. But then Lily called out, beckoning me to push her higher on the swing, and just like that, my fleeting curiosity about Alex's regrets vanished into the air.